Jim McBride is a Marine Corps veteran and a Johns Island resident who wants to tackle issues such as infrastructure, growth, and housing. I talk one-on-one with Jim about why he's running for the newly created Charleston City Council's District 3 seat on Johns Island for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Jim McBride, welcome to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thanks. It's good to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, you're welcome. I appreciate it greatly. I know that you are a Marine Corps veteran with 25 years of experience in service and 7 deployments overseas. Currently, you are a Johns Island resident, a Charleston City Council candidate for the newly created District 3 area, Johns Island, and a husband as well as a father. You also currently work for a remote patient monitoring technology company, which is focused on giving veterans more options and better access to health care. So tell me, Jim, with all of your experience in military and business, why Charleston City Council? Why now?
Well, because when I retired from out of the Marine Corps, out of the Pentagon, and my wife and I wanted to pick a place to live, we narrowed down between Florida, the whole state of Florida, or Charleston. We've been to Charleston before, and we loved it, fell in love with it like so many other people do, and that's why so many people are moving here. And just the character and the charm of the downtown, and just the beauty of James and Johns Island, the live oaks, and just the rural nature of it. We picked Johns Island. Lived on James for a few months, and then moved into a new house on Johns Island, and love it, and really quickly found out that the infrastructure planning for Johns Island in particular was poorly done, was not done with a lot of forethought, and the traffic coming off of Johns Island. If you ever try to drive off of Johns Island at 7 a.m, God love you. Godspeed. It's going to take you an unknown amount of time to get onto James Island. It's pretty crazy, and I just couldn't figure out why that was until I started asking around and started to kind of, pick up the carpets and see the cockroaches scattered, and kind of hearing the reasons why. And I can talk about that a little bit later. And ever since I retired, in 2021, people have been asking me to run for office in general. And I thought, yeah, maybe down the road, someday in the future. And then this seat opened up, and I was asked to run because I thought I could make some changes to the infrastructure here and start getting things going in the right direction.
You talk about, obviously, the infrastructure and how it's been poorly done in this particular area, Jim. In your mind, should there be a moratorium on all construction until a comprehensive infrastructure plan can actually be implemented by the city?
Now, there's already comprehensive plans at the county and city level.
Right.
A moratorium, I don't think would be, I'm not even sure if that'd be legal, and I don't think that'd be right, because, the builders are already own the land, and as long as they go through the proper legal permitting process, they should be allowed to build according to the land they purchased. So I don't think a moratorium is legal or correct. There's other ways we could possibly slow the growth, which I could talk about.
So how do you slow the growth smartly?
So what is legal to do is something called impact fees.
Right. And
this is just something, an idea, and I'd have to, vet it through the county and the state, and, to convince the rest of the city council. Everyone's got to remember, this is an important seat, and it's representing Johns and part of James Island. And we finally have that for Johns Island. But it's one member of 12 plus the mayor.
Sure,
so it takes some convincing and talking to the people on the city council and the lawyers and that kind of stuff. But impact fees are legal. They've been used in Fort Mill since the 1990s. And Section 6-1-910 of the South Carolina Code, it's called the South Carolina Development Impact Fee Act. And in Fort Mill, they charge a fee, a one-time fee, not an ongoing fee, but a one-time fee for new developments only. So it wouldn't be added to old developments, wouldn't be a new tax or anything like that.
Right.
And I personally would want to only do it. I wouldn't want to do it to new businesses, because I don't want to handcuff new businesses trying to get their feet on the ground.
Okay. But
just for potentially, again, it's just an idea, potentially new developments, one-time fee, and it specifically would be for for infrastructure on Johns Island, if that's what the district, or basically District 3, just all District 3, which is part of James Island as well.
Right.
For infrastructure for that purpose only. And it would be tied to specific infrastructure objectives. So it wouldn't be, a one-time fee forever. It wouldn't be designed to punish developers or builders. It would be to get the infrastructure back in front of the growth of the island.
So what are those infrastructure objectives do you have in mind?
So the Maybank and River intersection is just a disaster, as well as 17 and Main. 17 and Main has a little bit of hope because they got the flyover is funded. Supposed to start sometime maybe second quarter next year. That'll take some time, but at least something's going to happen there. On the Maybank and River intersection, there's not a lot planned yet. So there could be things we could do, such as, again, this is just another idea that is potentially viable, reversible lanes. Have you ever seen reversible lanes in some bigger areas? So, because the bottleneck is a three lane bottleneck on Maybank going on to James from Johns, and you could potentially do 2 lanes surging towards James Island during morning rush hour traffic, and then 2 lanes surging back onto Johns Island from James on that area. A much more logical flow. That would require really good signaling to make it clear to everybody, what lane is doing what at what time of day. And then in the middle between rush hours could be a middle, flex lane, like a turn lane in the middle. That would probably require, because of the signaling requirements, could require cutting down some of the canopy of the trees that are overhanging, on both sides of that part of Maybank. But we'd have to look to see how much that may have to happen, or if it could be avoided altogether. We'd have to look at that, and that still requires county. It's a county funded road, but this is the kind of thing, like bringing new ideas like this and getting the data and the facts and bringing it to the county, bringing it to Joe Boykin, Jenny Honeycutt, or our 2 county representatives for our area, and seeing if we can make something like that happen. So that would be kind of a short term, potentially, improvement. It wouldn't solve all our problems, but that would be a short term. And then medium term would be do you know about the 2024 county sales tax referendum coming up?
Oh, yes.
Next year. In January and February, the county is going to have public forums for people to come and to advocate for priorities for the money that would raise. So that would raise $5.4 billion over the life of that half-cent sales tax referendum. Again, this is county level. I want to make it clear. It's not city, but county.
Right.
And the 526 extension, Mark Clark extension, would cost about $2 billion. So the rest of it would be funding for other infrastructure projects all around the county, which is why we'd have to fight, and I'd have to fight and work with Joe Boykin and Jenny Honeycutt to get a lot of that money towards us to fund the southern pitchfork. So the northern pitchfork's already being built. That'll be done early next year. That'll relieve a little bit of pressure. We could fund the southern pitchfork, and we could expand Maybank at that 3-lane portion to 4 lanes, right by River Road. The county does own the land, can make it 4 lanes. Joe Boykin and Jenny Honeycutt have a good idea to go around a tree to save one of the trees they're worried about cutting down. So that's kind of the midterm. So the short term might be reversible lanes. Again, might. Midterm would be that 2024 referendum funding those southern pitchfork and Maybank expansion to 4 lanes. And longer term would be, if this is all assuming the 2024 referendum passes, the 526 extension finally coming to Johns Island sometime 10 years from now. So that's kind of the long term.
Yes, sir. And just as a disclaimer, I spoke with Joe Boykin about this on Quintin's Close-Ups, and of course, for the past 10 years, I've been talking about 526 on Quintin's Close-Ups. So anybody can go back on YouTube and look at that. But the reversible lanes, how much would that cut down traffic on Johns Island?
It just relieves some of the pressure. I couldn't give you a percentage, but it just, because right now it's 3 lanes, so 2 lanes go one way and 1 lane goes the other. So if we could just relieve some of the pressure on the other part of the rush hour that they don't have those 2 lanes, it wouldn't hurt. It would definitely help. And it just seems like a logical thing to do. It's used in larger metropolitan areas. And again, that would be just, in my mind, a short-term fix until we could expand Maybank there to 4 lanes once we get that funding. And by the way, really quick, we don't have to wait for that 2024 referendum to pass. The state has money for infrastructure, and the county just has to request it, and we have to vie for it and fight for it. And it's a lot of it's based on population, and with the population growth of Johns Island, it's increased 53% since 2010. Once we reach certain thresholds, it allows us, justifies us to ask for more money to bring to Johns Island and James Island. And one more really quick point: there was a state infrastructure bank meeting about 2 weeks ago, I think it was, where they they got the approval for the $75 million to start the permitting and start the assessments and everything to get that started, even before the funding's there to actually build it. And in that meeting, I watched it. A lot of the justification they used was Johns Island being over capacity for infrastructure. So, yay, thank you for making our case for us. But, that solution was for the 526, which won't be here for at least 10 years. So we're going to use that justification now that I know that they know very clearly that Johns Island is over capacity for our infrastructure. Then I'm going to fight for getting money sooner to address that.
So how much money do you expect to come to James and Johns Islands?
I don't know. Couldn't tell you that. Depends on how much is available, and how much they divvy out, and how often and to what proportions and all that stuff. I got to look into that.
And you obviously you talked about the funding for the Southern Pitchfork. How much would that cost?
Not sure right now.
Okay. Now going back to the trees, I know that might be an issue in this particular situation. How many trees might be potentially impacted by all of this?
It really depends on, if you're talking about the reversible lanes, it would depend on where the signaling would go. That's got to be surveyed and assessed, by the engineers and traffic engineers and everything. And it was just what Joe Boykin, I talked to him about it. He said, that might be the only major impact, because, again, other than the signaling, it would just be repainting the lanes that already exist. It wouldn't require any new construction of actual lanes. The lanes are there. It would just be the signaling, and so we'd have to look to see where the signaling would go, how tall it would have to be. We got to make sure it can be tall enough because it would have to go over, because you have signals that change, either red or green depending on the time of day. So it's got to be high enough for certain, trucks and that kind of thing to get under. So it just depends on how high it would have to be, where in that section it would have to be, to see what the impact is.
And has anybody done an environmental study on all of this?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay. Now, let me ask you this. You talked about earlier, Jim, about obviously, new development in the area. Where exactly is that in your district?
So there's, just by that intersection I just talked about, there's new developments going up right there. There is more building going on. So going off of Johns Island, crossing river, there's that apartment complex on the left there. Going on to James from Johns. They're still building more there. They're starting to build more on the other side where the Harris Teeter might go in a couple of years. There's developments going up in multiple places around the island. To list them off for you would be very difficult.
I completely understand that. No worries at all. But let me ask you this then, Jim. How many high-density apartments are there in District 3?
There's in all District 3. There's one on James. I was just knocking on doors there last week, near the intersection of Central Park and Riverland.
Sure.
There's the ones that are, like I just described, corner of River and Maybank. There's some down near Bohicket and Maybank intersection. There's some right near the subsidized housing area there. There's some high density.
Oh yes.
So those are the three I can think of off the top of my head.
Wow. And how many apartments do you foresee being built in District 3 in the next 5 years?
So down in that same area near Bohicket and Maybank, there's it's already approved for it's called Esau Jenkins Village.
Right.
It'll be 77 units, and then more affordable housing also near where the housing's going in right now at the corner of Maybank and River, called the Grove at Johns Island. That's about 40 units.
Wow. So then, with all of these homes and apartments that you just mentioned here in District 3, Jim, how many homes have been built at a fairly consistent rate in District 3?
it's been nonstop, and I couldn't tell you like how many per month are going up, things like that. But I mean, everyone sees that they're being built constantly. There's new developments popping up.
Wow.
It seems like every couple weeks. Sometimes you don't necessarily see it because it's behind a row of trees, and you might take a wrong turn. Like, whoa, what's this? Look at this development here. When did this start going up? I mean, it's happening a lot.
Wow.
So I mean, and it's hard to. It's frankly impossible to predict how that trend will continue because the developers decide when they're going to build. Like once they get permitted,
right?
And when we're on the city council, we'll have some more visibility about that to see when the permits are filed and how long it takes to get approved and when they're going to start building. So it's impossible to predict the rate in the near future.
Okay, then let me ask you this, then, Jim. How many apartments are there in District 3 versus homes?
I mean, I just listed the apartments that we have. I'd have to give you the actual numbers for how many homes there are. It's, I would say, probably 10% or less of the total homes as far as the apartment units. That's just a rough guess.
Now, let me ask you this, then. What is the median home price out there in Johns Island now these days?
And you ask a lot of challenging questions.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, off the top of my head, I don't know what the median home price is. It changes obviously a lot right now with the interest rates having gone up a lot. That's an impact, and I talk to realtors all the time. It's impacting sales and that kind of thing. Actually, I did read it recently. I think it's around. I think it was around $400,000 or something like that. A stat recently that sounds about right from my recollection.
Wow. And I know you talked about those developers early in this interview. Let me ask you, how many of those developers have actually built affordable units for your district in the past 5 years?
So like I said, you got the ones going up right now at they're going to go up in the Grove of Johns Island. There's the ones that are going to go up in East of Jenkins Village.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if the ones that are already built there at the corner of River and Maybank are considered affordable. So affordable housing. So because all affordable housing is all housing priced at or under 30% of pre-tax household income of households making from 0% to 120% of area median income. So I don't know which specific apartments that are currently within the last 5 years that have been built. I think the ones, like I mentioned on James Island, might fall into that category.
Well, let me ask you this then, Jim. What's more important for your district? Is it building new homes like I'm looking right now in commercial space, or rehabbing, expanding, and better utilizing those existing homes?
Say that question again, please.
Yeah, no worries. What's more important for the district as I'm looking at houses right here where I am? Is it building new homes and expanding those commercial space, or rehabbing, expanding, and better utilizing the existing homes?
Frankly, in my opinion, that's up to the free market. I mean, I wouldn't want to influence that. If there are homes that need to be rebuilt or remodeled, I'll leave that to the people who like to flip homes and developers and deciding whether they want to build new homes or not. And again, I'm not for or against development. I really do because I'm a big pro-business guy, and developers are a business. It's their income. Right. I don't want to punish the developers by any stretch of the imagination. I want to give them the freedom to figure out, based on the zoning that they already have and the land they already own. It's the city council, over the last 10 plus years could have done a better job zoning that and not just expecting the 526 to be here 10 years ago, for example. That's a big reason why we're in the mess we're in. So it's a long answer to your question, but I want to leave it up to developers. But we have to understand that the reason we're in this situation is because the city comprehensive plan and the county comprehensive plan, they kind of overlap and they sync up, and they address zoning and runoff and flooding mitigation and streets and all that stuff. Started around the year 2000. And at some point after that, there was 526 was going to come again and didn't happen. And that was in the county plan. And so then the city said, oh, okay, we're going to have the infrastructure coming from the 526 extension. So we will zone all this land for developers because once they finish developing, the 526 will be there. And once you sell the land and zone it and sell it to developers, they now own it. You can't take it back. You can't change. Change it. So that's kind of how we got in the situation we're in right now.
Well, let me ask you this, Dan. You talk about that stormwater. Where exactly is the City of Charleston stormwater manual?
Where exactly is the City of Charleston stormwater manual? You ask really interesting questions. I just looked at this yesterday, actually, preparing for a forum. Where is the manual? It's online.
Okay.
It should be online. So there's a restoration plan to improve flood resiliency. That's not exactly the manual you're talking about,
yes,
but it talks about how the City of Charleston stormwater regulations were improved in 2019. It included a 2020 all hazards, vulnerability, and risk assessment. So to look at where the risks are for when the water does rise, which areas of District 3 and John's. This one's from John's Island specifically, I believe. Are at more risk. And then also 2020 it talked about the Maybank Highway and Main Road Overlay Zoning Project.
Right.
So that's what I looked at yesterday. I mean, I don't think it's the manual you're talking about, but there's obviously a lot of looking at flood mitigation as these developments are going in. And because of the 2019 City of Charleston stormwater regulations, that's a huge improvement because it requires the builders and developers to basically, after they finish developing, the runoff and drainage is supposed to be better than when they started before they started developing. So that the impact of the development is supposed to be not a negative as far as water runoff, and it's supposed to not contribute to our flooding risk.
So when you look around the district, and I know you've been knocking on a lot of doors, Mr. Jim, so where exactly are there drainage issues right now in District 3?
Well, there's one big problem in, look it up here, Barbary Woods is an HOA. They've had I don't know if it was a mistake and it's just the development of it, but they have some serious flooding problems. The state got involved recently, I think last year or so. So it's kind of a state, county, citywide project to address the flooding in the Barbary Woods Homeowners Association. It's a beautiful neighborhood, and when I found out about this, knocking on doors, and we haven't had a lot of rain lately, so it looked like just a beautiful, no impact, neighborhood that I started to hear about this flooding issue. I'm like, wow. But again, thankfully, it's been notified, and there's a plan to mitigate that using the Dutch dialogues and procedures.
Do you agree with any of their assessments from the Dutch dialogues? That is.
Oh yeah, I mean the whole idea of, that's kind of where that 2019 stormwater regulations and all hazard vulnerability and risk assessment and the Maybank Highway, all that is taken in the Dutch dialogues concepts, so that when developments go in, they do it now in a way that does not add to the risk of flooding. That's Dutch dialogues influenced stuff. It's a very good concept. So we can't just take it all as a blanket. Oh, let's do exactly what the Dutch dialogues, say. But it's very informative. It's based on, usage overseas, and it's worked. So why not learn from folks where it's worked?
Now, where else do you see the risk for all of this flooding and stormwater regulations in your district, District 3?
I'm looking at the risk areas, and there's a few highlighted. I don't have them off the top of my head. There's a few areas where we have to look at, but it hasn't really been much of an issue because of this, these regulations. But there are, of course, and I mentioned the Barbary Woods. Right. That's obviously an obvious one. There are some other ones, but that's the worst one I've heard in our area, where there are areas that are identified even close to high risk from the all hazards vulnerability and risk assessment 2020. That's I looked at it yesterday. I got to look at it more closely to see where the specific risks are to be proactive about trying to prevent that from happening, and using Dutch dialogues methods, putting in drainage ditches and just different things that they use, collection ponds,
Right.
that were not put in at the initial development, to put them in now after the fact, if and where that can be done.
Yes, sir. I know you have just like 2 minutes left because you have to run to the next meeting. But let me turn over to obviously the politics. As you know, the city of Charleston council race is obviously nonpartisan. But Mr. McBride, I went back a couple of weeks ago and I noticed that you got a donation from a Moms for Liberty, supporter for you. They donated $1,000 to your campaign. Is that right?
I don't know. I don't know what organizations my supporters belong to.
Yeah, it says here it was $1,000 coming from a woman named Renee Brockington. She's a retired person. She donated $1,000 to your campaign. Do you in any way support Moms for Liberty by chance?
I haven't. What I support is giving parents more rights over their children's education. And I have not received endorsements from Moms for Liberty. I haven't received money from Moms for Liberty. I've received donations from literally dozens of individuals. I don't ask them what organizations they belong to. I've received donations from across the political spectrum. People hear my experience and my qualifications. They see my character and my leadership ability and what I've done in the past, and they know that I can bring better infrastructure improvement to Johns and James Island. So,
and you talked earlier about the parents. So how is that correlating with the ideas and goals for the city of Charleston?
Well, just how the parents. So the parents, this whole Moms Liberty thing and the school board, which again, this is a weird question to me because this is a county level issue. It's not a city council level issue. So again, I don't even know why Moms Liberty or any school board related issue would care about the city council. To be honest, children's education is one of the most passionate topics across the political spectrum. Parents and non-parents care a lot about what their kids are being taught in school. So I understand that. I understand the passions around this are extremely high. I on the periphery, I see the chaos in the school board recently. It's been a mess. It's made everybody angry across the political spectrum. I understand it. People have to understand, or I hope people will understand that the school board members were voted for by Charleston voters. Whether they were backed by Moms for Liberty or backed by other organizations, I don't know who was backed by who. I literally do not know. But the voters voted for him. And with free speech being one of the things that we value in this country, a lot of the passionate discussion and dialogue around this issue is warranted because people don't like what certain school board members are doing, and just like they didn't like it, before this current batch of school board members was there, it led to passionate debate and led to an election that led to these school board members. And when the next election comes up, they can vote on new school board members. That's America right there, and free speech. And as long as the speech is respectful across the board, again, I completely understand the passions involved in this. And again, it's a county level issue. It's has nothing to do directly with the city council. Though I care about it. I care about what our kids are learning in school, and I care about parents having, more say in what their children are learning. And I don't care what the political persuasion of the parent is. Just giving parents more say in their children's education is important to everybody.
So let me ask you this then: how nonpartisan will you be on the Charleston City Council?
100% nonpartisan. When it comes to city council, we're talking about infrastructure and roads, and
right.
I care about the taxpayers, and I care about the taxpayers sitting in traffic for 45 minutes to an hour every single workday, every single school day. I'm fiscally conservative, so I don't believe in raising taxes to solve our problems. I believe in using the money that we already are taxed and that are not coming back enough to Johns Island to fix our infrastructure. I believe in using that money more wisely to fix the problems that we have. And again, the county level, if they do a sales tax, that's a county level thing. I don't believe we should be raising property taxes on Johns Island and James Island and District 3 because we're clearly not getting our tax money back. It's going downtown, and it's not coming back to us. And just look at our infrastructure, and that's obvious.
Now, you said that the city council race has nothing to do with Moms for Liberty. So would you refund this $1,000 to this lady who gave you money on August 2nd, 2023?
No, why would I do that? I mean, I'm receiving money from across the political spectrum. Would I have the time to look at some other organization that some other member belongs to that I don't whether I align with it or not, and give it back? I mean, my opponents are taking money from political action committees, and they're not turning that money back. So, listen, whatever organization individual people belong to, I am going to represent all the people in the district of Johns and James Island. In addition to all of Charleston, I'm a member of the Charleston City Council. I care about all the issues across all of Charleston city districts. And so whoever gave me money, whatever organization they belong to, I'm representing them, and I'm representing those who didn't give me money.
Jim McBride, thank you so much for your time. And again, welcome to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thanks. I appreciate the time. Appreciate the opportunity.
Anytime. You're welcome.